How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm good.
What is life like in Ireland at the moment?
Life in Ireland is good. I made a decision last week. I was stopping watching all news, all political discourse, all articles, not watching the presidential debate. I've just extricated myself from everything because it's the only way I can keep sane, really. I realized last week that it's not that I was feeling, between the dying of democracy in the US, between Johnson and Brexit and chaos in the UK, between never-ending COVID, between the rise of right-wing all over the world. I was reading articles, and it's not that I was getting annoyed when I was reading them, but I realized after a few weeks, I had this kind of I had all these layers of depression inside me. I described it like when you're in a snowfall and the snow's falling very gently and you don't really notice it until you're up to your waist in it and you're paralyzed and you can't move, and it felt like that. And I thought, okay, and I wasn't sleeping. My sleep pattern was disrupted.
Wow.
And I was irritable, and I thought, oh, this is terrible. I'm becoming completely unbalanced here. So I've just silenced all of that noise, really, to just get myself back into center. Yeah.
So it was really a conscious decision?
Yeah. So and already, I've not even been doing it a full week yet, but already I can start to feel better. I realized I was thinking about it all day. I was looking at the news app as soon as I woke up. I was looking at it last thing before I went to sleep, and I thought, just can't do this anymore. So I just stopped all of that. Yeah.
I think we're already in the middle of the conversation. Pulling back.
That's not what we're supposed to be talking about.
Well, pulling back to the center is I have, when I did my preparation, just for the benefit of the people who actually listen to it or watch it afterwards, I met you 6 years ago at a conference. And what I found amazing at the time was like you used two words together that I hadn't really connected previously. You put spirituality with leadership. And I was like, what is she talking about? And I was fascinated by that concept of being able to combine both. And that's why we're in the middle of the conversation already. How did you get there to take leadership topics and spirituality, and how did they get connected?
Well, it was really through the concept of spiritual intelligence, which was created by, well, the term wasn't, but her particular tool was Cindy Wigglesworth in the US. And she produced 21 identifiable, observable, measurable skills in the development of spiritual intelligence. So it's like the next level after emotional intelligence. Now, if you remember when emotional intelligence first came out, everybody said it was nonsense.
Yes.
And now everybody talks about you need more EQ. You need to go on an EQ course, And I think it's going to be the same with SQ, because that is the next level, is the spiritual intelligence. So then it was like, wow, so we can use words like spirituality, but we can also use words like competence and performance, corporate words with that word spirituality. Now, I'd been talking about spirituality in the workplace since the first time I spoke at a conference about it was 1996. Whereas this tool of spiritual intelligence, and she has an online assessment that you can do, and then a whole detailed 20-page report with tips about how to improve each one of the skills, because obviously you can't work on all of the skills together, and you can have a debrief. So I trained, but it was 2012 when I did that. I trained in how to debrief that tool. So it was a way that made it more, I tend, if I was talking to people in organizations, I would tend to start off using the term deep intelligence before I would use the term spiritual intelligence. But that's what it is, really. And I had workshops on that. Now, it's still considered, I think, it's too much for some people. It's too avant-garde. But it will be, another 20 years, everybody's been will be talking about doing a spiritual intelligence course, just in the way that now they automatically all sign up and send people on emotional intelligence courses. So that was brilliant for me, because it combined all the work I was doing in corporates with my own basic love of spirituality and what my own views were about it. And here, instead of having to keep them separate, here was a way I could combine them, because I realized my life has always been about integrating something.
When I've been going into businesses or talking to management, I've noticed I have to be very careful with the terms I'm using. And yes, words like skills and competencies are common knowledge and are acceptable. However, spirituality, I mean, even in some ways, emotional intelligence, it's not that mainstream yet. I mean, you break it down, you say, well, people need to know what their strengths are, their weaknesses, how they cope with stress, how they motivate them. That is emotional intelligence. Yes. How do you explain to somebody who might be a little bit conservative what spiritual leadership or spiritual intelligence is?
I link it with the term authenticity. Now, people are very familiar with saying leaders need to be authentic and organizations need to be authentic. Nobody ever really defines that word. And they say, oh, well, you just have to be true to yourself. Yeah, well, Hitler was true to himself. You know, I mean, it's more than that. It's, well, how do you reach it? And can you teach it? How do you reach it, and can you teach it? And for me, the door to authenticity comes through, and that's the complete leader, is someone, because it's part of ourselves. We have a physical self, a mental self, an emotional self, and a spiritual self. Now, the spiritual self has been the one that's been most neglected in the workplace, followed by the emotional self. It's, you know, but IQ gets us into an organization. They look at your CV, they look at your degrees, they look at how clever you are, you know. Yeah. So I can, and everybody's now a bit more clued into the fact of physical intelligence. You have to listen to your body. So fitness isn't just a fad, it's a necessity. You have to stay healthy in your body. So those two are okay, still heavily swung towards the mental. Emotional now is coming on board. You can get to authenticity through the physical, the mental, the emotional, or the spiritual, but you have to have access to all of them. And then you will choose which doorway you need to go through, which will depend on the context. It will depend on the situation. It will depend on what's going on. It will depend on, but you have to be able to draw on that if you want to. It's not just enough to think you can use your IQ. And it's not about praying and meditating all day. It's about being clued in to deeper purpose and deeper meaning. Mm-hmm. And what really drives you. Because eventually when you've got the success and you've made the money and you've got the car and you've got the 2 homes, there are still people who are saying, well, what now? Was it all for that? All the sacrifices? Is this it then? People know that this isn't it. But as I say, they don't know how to reach what else there is. Until they can match up, until they can integrate all the parts of themselves into who they are as a leader. Now, people follow leaders where people can see exactly who they are. That might mean showing your vulnerability sometimes. It might mean giving them some space to explore a part of themselves. And they can see that. That's how people react to leaders, not just leaders putting in a strategy and getting their managers to implement it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot more concern now that true leadership is about who the person is. And therefore, we have to have a look. What leaders have a deep dive into themselves? They're too busy firefighting. So that there's always been a link there, but it's not being explicit. And it will become more explicit as there's more and more need for what I call integrated leaders.
I certainly hope so, because it sounds exactly what I've been preaching. You know, it's a lot of the skills they can learn very quickly, but the long drawn line is always the line, who are you? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? Where does the drive come from?
Yeah.
You know, is it really just the two houses, the two cars, whatever, the dog, and that vision? Is that actually your own vision, or did you just take it on from your family or society or whoever?
It's interesting, you know, because when I do that executive retreat, I always pick them up personally from the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So we start work in the car, coming back to my house,
Yeah.
stay at a very lovely kind of 3-star B&B kind of locally, which is excellent. And then I cook them dinner while they do the first exercise at the kitchen table. So this is already completely mind-blowing for people who are used to the 4 seasons and the corporate life. So I get them to draw a picture. The first off, I said, draw me a picture. It can be on anything you want, a scene or one object, it doesn't matter. But I want to see all the parts of you in that picture and for you to tell me. And I give an example like of a flower, and the petals might be something and the stem might be something and the earth might be something. So this guy drew a house. It was almost like a child's picture of a house with a sun. So I said, okay, now tell me about your picture, because they had to draw the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual parts of themselves. So he said, oh, the house is the physical, because that's the house, the structure of the house. He said, the roof is the mental, he said, because that's the top of it all. Right? He said, the sun is the spiritual, because it gives light to everything. So I said, and where's your emotional self? And he said, the emotional self, he said, oh, well, that's in that room there, but you just can't see it. It's in the room. So, and of course, when we explored it, and he talked to me, he was a Muslim, he talked to me about kneeling down when he was 8 with his grandma, saying his prayers. And he said, nobody had ever asked him about any of that. And I said, well, what did that mean to you? Was that important to you? And when did it stop being important to you? You know, so we're just having a general discussion about this part of himself that he just, I mean, he said the sun was the spiritual self, but the sun wasn't shining everywhere in the house, you know. So that was, or it was behind a cloud or something. I mean, that was hidden as much as his emotional self was. Mm-hmm. He was governed by his mental and his physical. Keep healthy and think of what to do next, you know. And I think that's the way a lot of leaders are.
What I'm curious about is, how did that path for you start off? I mean, if you had been asked 20 years ago, I don't know, to draw those 4 parts, could you have done it?
Oh, that's a really hard question. Could I have done it? Maybe 20 years ago I was starting to. I was always what I would call spiritually inclined, because I was raised as a Catholic. So I was given a very strong foundation of God, but of course it was aligned with the Catholic Church. And then as I grew older, I became disenchanted with the organization that was the church. But I never lost my love of something bigger. It's just that whereas at one time when I was a little girl, I saw God in the traditional Catholic child's version of God as a wise old man in the sky, making the rules, but being benevolent as well, you know. And that changed to me realizing that I'm actually part of God. He's not separate from me, or he, she, or it. That doesn't matter either, whichever pronoun you want to use. And I'm part of it, and it's part of me. And so I when I pray now, I'm praying to my soul, to my higher, my best self. There's a part of me that is pure and that knows what it's doing, and it gets sidetracked by my ego. You know, I spent the first 40 years of my life building up my ego, and I spent since I was 40 taming it, you know, and letting it know it's not in the driving seat. You know, it can be in the passenger seat, but it cannot be in the driving seat, you know, and that's a constant work when you've got a strong ego. And you need a strong ego to be successful in the physical world, in the human world. But then that's that journey. I think everyone's life journey is from ego to spirit. And it's a journey we will all make, even if it takes 17 lifetimes to do it, because we can't stop evolution, because that's the way we're evolving. So, you know, we will evolve to be part of this amazing wholeness, oneness, whatever name you want to give it, and its semantics doesn't matter to me. I realized then that the Catholic Church I found very easy. You know, you just go to confession and you say, sorry, Father, I've done this, that, and the other. And he says, say 3 Hail Marys, off you go. And you think, oh, I'm clean now. You know, yet there was no responsibility in it. I didn't. Whereas now it was like every thought, every word, every action, I'm responsible for everything here. You know, it was a huge responsibility kind of when I took that on, but it freed me from the organization that was the church. And it was a few years after I'd left the church that 2 different people sent me a little clip in a magazine which said, did you ever want to be a minister? And 2 different people sent it to me. And I always like to work from the law of 2. If the same information comes to you from 2 different people, you should pay attention to it. So I went to the meeting in London, and it was a course that had been running in the US for 20 years, interfaith ministry. So I was in the very first course that happened in the UK in 1996, and I was ordained in 1998 as an interfaith minister and spiritual counsellor.
Do tell us what an interfaith minister does.
Well, it's up to each person. That the first year of study, you look at the major traditions and spiritual philosophies. And in the second year, you look at creating different ceremony and how to do spiritual counseling, etc. But when you're ordained, there's nothing that says, now you're a minister, this is what you have to do. There's no church, there's no dogma. There are guiding principles, which is our ethics statement, if you like. And it's up to each minister to find their ministry in their community. So some people work in hospices. Some people have introduced spiritual counselling into their regular counselling practice. Some people do ceremony in the community. I knew I wanted to do ceremony, and I knew I particularly wanted to do weddings, because for me, that's helping a couple to create a ceremony that's full of love and joy and commitment, and can unite 2 families who might be very different as well. I mean, what better work is there to do than that, So that's the focus of my work. And I run spiritual exploration workshops from my home in Connemara, and I do spiritual guidance one-on-one. But my love is really doing wedding ceremonies.
So for quite a while, I understood that, hopefully right, you did both. You did the ministry and you did sort of management consultancy work.
Yeah, but I kept them very separate. Yeah, they were 2 kind of separate parts of my life, really. And I realized that I would introduce myself. If people said, what do you do? I would always say I'm a management consultant. I work with large organizations developing their people. I would not say I was a minister. And I spent a long time thinking, why don't I tell people I'm a minister? And when I actually stopped my management consultancy, well, I didn't stop it. It kind of wound down naturally, Then I did have a big identity crisis.
Yes.
Because that's who I was in the world. That's how people knew me. If people knew me for anything, they knew me as a management consultant. And now, I mean, I'd written books for women. I'd got an online coaching course for women. I'd done audios for women. I'd done a lot of products and courses, predominantly for women in the workplace. And then when all of that stopped, it was like, well, who am I? How am I presenting now in the world? And I had a kind of a bit of a crisis then internally, in myself, before I kind of realized that, yeah, it's okay to let that management consultancy go, because you want to do less now. I've worked for 50 years. I deserve to do less. That's okay. And I deserve to just do exactly what I choose to do. And that's okay too. So what happened then? I kind of got over that identity crisis.
Take us through, because I think that's, that can be very helpful. People go through those crises and we all deal with them differently. Some of us don't deal with them at all, and they don't arrive at the other end. So from looking back, I mean, you stood there now and suddenly, okay, who am I? That big chunk where I'm saying I am disappeared. How did you go through that crisis? How did you pull yourself through? What were the steps you took, or who did you talk to arrive on the other side?
Well, I moved countries for one thing.
Okay.
I know that's a bit drastic, but
not everybody can do that.
I know. But I mean, I was able to do that, and maybe now and people could do that, but they choose not to. You know, I mean, I'm a great believer. I've taken those kind of risks kind of all my life, thinking this looks like it might be better, therefore I'm going to do it, kind of thing. There are some people who wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't recognize an opportunity if it stood up and said good afternoon, and if they recognized it, they would refuse it. You know, so that's a lot to do, I think, with temperament as well, you know. But also I realized, because when I first came over to Ireland, I came with a partner, and so I designed as a commitment ceremony. So we had a commitment to the dance we're doing together until the dance is done. And the dance is done when one person says it's finished, and then the other will bow graciously and say, thank you for the dance. It was beautiful. Okay, so that was our plan. And now I can't imagine living anywhere else, because I didn't understand till I came here the meaning of the term spiritual home. But the best way I can describe it is that when I fly back to the UK, there's a definite pull of my roots. This is where I'm from. I'm from here. I know these people. I understand how things work in this place. I mean, I probably don't anymore, but that's the feeling of familiarity and birth roots. But when I fly back into Ireland as the plane's landing, then I'm thinking, now I'm home. I don't see the UK as home anymore. I see it as the base from which I came, a bit like I felt about Catholicism, but it was too confining. And that's what I felt, I guess, about the UK as well. Too confining. In fact, when I think back now, everything I've ever left, it's been because it was too confining. I taught for 7 years and I loved teaching. I was teaching pupils 11 to 16. I loved it. And I had my career path set out. I was going to be head of department, deputy head. I was going to have my own school by the time I was 35. And I didn't have any doubt I would do it. And that's what was going to happen, you know. And then after I've been teaching for 7 years, I got this thought, I wonder if there's something else I could do as well as this. And do I want to look back on my life and somebody say, what did you do with your life? And I say, I was a school teacher for 30 years, 40 years. And my parents were both teachers, and they were saying, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I said, no, there's nothing wrong with it, but I just feel that there might be a load of other things that I might be equally good at and might love. So I left teaching and I didn't have a job to go to. So I think I never had a problem with leaving something, even if I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to, knowing that there was something that was going to be fine, and it was going to be fine. A deep trust that I was looked after and I would be fine.
And that deep trust, did that help you to go and get through that redefining yourself moment?
Yeah. Now what happened a couple of years ago was, because I'd been very much enjoying, my friends know in the morning I sit in my black chair and I read and I meditate and I look at the sea and the mountains, and I started getting this little niggly voice on me. Yeah, well, you know, you can't do this for the next 20 years. How is this serving humanity? You can't just sit here like this. It's ridiculous. What are you doing? What are you doing for anybody, kind of thing? So a friend of mine has a charitable institution, and one of the places she works is Rwanda. And she said, well, we've got this project in Rwanda, and it's empowering women who we're teaching to be self-sustaining after they've come through abuse and rape and all the rest of it. And we're always looking for speakers. So the first I thought, okay, I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that. I said, okay, I'll come in the spring. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, I don't really want to do that. It's a long flight. I'll be up early. I have a lot of silence in my day. I thought, I'll be on the go all day. What, do I want to do that? My friend in Ireland, Breed, said to me, if you want to do some good in the community, you don't need to go all the way to Rwanda. There's plenty to do in Ireland. That's very true. And then a very wise friend of mine who's a coach, I was talking to her about what I called my dilemma. And And she said, well, okay, but before you go rushing to find a solution to what you call your dilemma, she said, what beliefs are holding it up? What beliefs are holding up this dilemma that you have to be out there doing? So I said, well, first my Christian beliefs, that you help those less fortunate than yourself, and my esoteric beliefs now, because I follow the esoteric tradition now, which is that there's no spirituality without service. You can't call yourself spiritual if you're doing no service. So my friend said to me, so you think you're not serving now, do you? And she knows me very well. And she proceeded to list all these things that she knows I do right now that she perceives as service to other people. And she said, what I want to know is, why are you discounting all these things that are about service? She said, you need to be careful that it's not your ego driving this. It's not your ego wanting to do a grand gesture, going to Rwanda to do something. She said, you're serving now all the time. She said, by serving, and she named all these people who she knows that who have helped. And she says, value that. You are already serving. You don't need to be searching for something else to do. Look, pay attention to what comes to you and do that. So that's what I do now.
I think that's also a good advice to others. Don't look for grand gestures, but if you want to be serving, look around you. And I think specifically to us women who are wearing so many different hats, I think during the day it would be a beautiful exercise to sit down for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, and to write down all the things you do for others in service, because you like them, because you love them, because maybe there's a belief saying you have to, a good daughter is doing that, or a good wife or a good mother is doing that. But list it. I think that's something really fundamental, to see black on white where your service is, and then to take a deep breath.
It can be really minor things. I mean, smiling at someone in the street who looks sad is service. I mean, remembering to ask someone how they are after their operation. I mean, that's service. I mean, and women are very good at constantly thinking of other people's needs. What we've been not very good at is paying attention to our own needs. And it's not that we should put our needs above everybody else's, but they should be at least as important as everybody else's. And a lot of women have sadly neglected, their own needs as being not worthy of consideration, really.
Have you got, from your experience, some tools, some tips for women to turn that mirror around, saying, okay, well, how can I serve myself today? What nice gesture can I do for myself?
Well, some of it, I mean, and that simple thing, I heard it so many years ago from a woman at a conference, and I've passed it on to so many women, that look at yourself in the mirror every day and say to the person in the mirror, I think you're fabulous, and I'm going to do something nice for you today. And then do it, whatever it is. 5 minutes on your own, a walk at lunchtime, doesn't matter what it is, buy yourself something, whatever, because we don't acknowledge ourselves. Of course, we've got a ton of gifts, and there's nothing wrong with serving other people, with serving our families, with serving our kids, and a lot of women do that exceptionally well. But there will be a time when if you've done your job right with your kids, they're off on their own life, and then your work in an organization might be coming to an end, or you might have been made redundant. And now what? Now, what are you going to do now? You're there now. And who are you now? And what are you doing now? Yes, you're still a mother, but you've not got immediate caring responsibilities in the house. I know for some children, adult children are coming back home now, so they are, but it's important to look at that. And if you've never valued the skills that you've got, the strengths that you've got, and what's good about you, it's going to be very hard then to go out and try something new, because you'll think that nobody nobody will value it, that it's not worth anything, that you're not worth anything. That's the deep-seated negative belief that all women have, maybe all people, but especially women, that I'm worthless.
Or I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough.
Yeah. But let's just stay there. I'm not good enough. What's the first thing we can do? I mean, apart from being conscious of that, actually, I think that's already the beginning. What can we do to support ourselves on that path to overcome, to leave behind that limiting belief that really sticks with a lot of us? I'm not good enough.
No. Well, partly if we've got some good friends who will tell us that, we can do that for each other. It's very powerful in a group of close friends. So to choose friends who are positive, who see you and love you in spite of all your flaws, and maybe because of your flaws, but also see all the good in you and are willing to tell you what that is on a regular basis, because that's what we do for other people all the time. So having some friends and contracting with friends to do this for each other, so all of those negative messages we've had all our lives can start to be being replaced by more positive ones. Things like taking our energy from source being outside, even if it's only, walking around a tree in the car park where you've parked your car in your organization. That's the quickest way of getting that. That's why everybody says they always feel better when they've come back from a walk. It's so much better because we've taken energy from source, whereas normally we take energy from other people. And a lot of women who are strong women find that a lot of people suck their energy. So we'll all be used to people who come and see you, say, oh, can I talk to you? And then they talk to you for half an hour, and then they go and say, oh, I feel so much better now, thank you. And they go, and you're thinking, well, thank you very much. I feel a whole lot worse after that, So we have to learn how to protect ourselves so we can give our time and not have our energy sucked out. So a lot of these tips, I do have some little videos about that on my YouTube page, but a lot of these tips are in the books that I've written for women. How to keep yourself in balance, how to keep a long-term focus as well as a short-term one, how to deal with ongoing stress. There's so many little different things that you can do. And women can just choose one a day to do or one a week to do. But you have to put the time in. People have invested a lot of time in telling women that they're not good enough. So we have to invest an equal amount of time into telling ourselves we are actually good enough. And work out how we can do that. Because one of the reasons women can't be assertive and clear in speech is because they don't believe they have the right. Yes. They don't believe they have the right to be clear or to contradict somebody, And we've got to get over that. Now we can do that in groups. We can go on workshops. We can read about it. We have to start educating ourselves, about what we can do personally and sharing that with our friends. And getting tips from our friends. Just like we all got tips from when you had small children and you would go to your friends and say, oh my goodness, this 2-year-old is just not sleeping. What did you do when your 2-year-old wouldn't sleep? You get loads of good ideas from your friends and you can try them all, We need to go to our friends and say, I feel really bad about myself. What can I do? And see what other people have done. Sign up for a confidence building course. Jules Wyman, who's on Facebook, has a brilliant confidence building course. She's inspirational. There are lots of people now who are teaching this stuff. So women need to sign up for some of it and start then thinking and feeling better about themselves and realizing, yes, that's true. That is me. I am that. And then bit by bit, then you will realize that you're becoming a more empowered person yourself.
And basically the idea being you're becoming more of yourself, not of what other people want you to be like or push you to be like, but actually who you are on the inside. And that's kind of like going full circle, because having then those four parts of you available to yourself, all four at all times, and then like a magician playing with them, saying, well, today in this situation with you, I use my mental strength.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And this time I'm using that strength. I think that is good.
You're right, Anya. It's like the rooms in a house. They need airing every day. Now, most people don't have to worry about the mental activity. They're doing that all the time. Mm-hmm. Physical activity, yeah, people are incorporating more of that into their day now. So emotional activity, having a good laugh at something. There's nothing more powerful than laughing out. I laugh out loud here in my house on my own often. I love humor. So laughter keeps us balanced. And then what do you do to develop your spiritual self? It might be no more than looking at a beautiful scene outside for 5 minutes, just looking at it for 5 minutes. It could just be that. You don't have to be doing an hour's meditation a day. Some people do, and that's great, but it's hard to start off with that. Mm-hmm. You just want a little period of quiet, and you'll realize what a difference that starts to make to you if you start doing something every day. One of the exercises I do with women in workshops, or I used to do, was to ask them, they all have to write down what was a favorite activity as a child. Mm-hmm. What did they love doing? And I remember one woman saying that she lived on a farm and she used to go up into the hayloft because she loved the horses and she could hear the horses below, and she used to sit in the hay reading. So I said, so now in your life, how much time are you with horses and how much time do you read? Mm-hmm. Neither. Mm-hmm. And it kind of shocked her, because I said, well, if that was your joy as a child, you can create that joy. You can make time for that mm-hmm. in your life because it was so important to you. You've lost it, but you can get it back. And another thing I would do is to ask women, what are their, say, 4 top priorities in life? And people would always put friends right near the top, friends. So I'd say, when was the last time you saw your friend? And they'd say, oh yeah, we keep trying to get to meet, but we're so busy and we haven't spoken. I say, well then take friends off your list. Don't tell me that they're a priority for you, because right now they're not. I said, there's no judgment on that, but mm-hmm. be honest about what your priorities are. And it's not friends at the minute. If you want friends to be a priority, you need to do something about that. Mm-hmm. Then you can put them back in your top 3. So it's just about having just refocusing on the little things that you can do to just bring yourself back. And that's what I call bringing yourself back to center all the time.
You've done so many different things in your life. What is currently kind of like getting you out of bed? Where is your passion at the moment?
Well, my passion at the minute is writing. Mm-hmm. So I'm writing my memoirs, which I'm calling, the book is going to be called Being the Sum Total of All the Parts of My Life. Mm-hmm. And I'm writing is essays, really. So I'm just choosing one thing and then another, and I'm just writing about that in like an essay form. So it's like, being a bride, I've done. Being a foster mum, I've done. Being available for internet dating, I've done. Some are reflective and some are funny, and some are about a particular incident that's happened, but it's a way to me that's more interesting of gradually being able to chart the whole of my life without doing what I would think of as a boring chronological. Mm-hmm. I did that for 2 years, and then I did that, and then I did that, because they're all standalone. They're all kind of standalone essays. It doesn't matter when it happened. It doesn't matter how old I was. It's about me at that particular point. But the sum total of it is who I am. It's who I am today, really. So that's what I'm spending my time on. I'm also writing a book on 100 tips to start, sustain and grow your consultancy. So I'm trying to capture what I've learned in my consultancy business in an easy to read format. So yeah, I like writing. So I write. I like to write in the afternoon. I don't like to do anything in the morning. And yeah, bit by bit, I've organised my life around me being at peace, basically.
Just do what you love for a moment, because it's your life.
Yeah. And even if you can't do what you love, you might be in the middle of something at work that you have to do. I realized when I was 39, my youngest brother was 29, and he was killed in a car crash. There was only him involved, and he was on the motorway that I used to go on regularly. And it made me think, gosh, you know, that could just be any of us who just got up one morning, he went to work, and then he just wasn't there anymore. And that could be me tomorrow. And then I thought, how many times during the day do I say, oh, I can't wait till it's Friday, or I can't wait for my holiday, I can't wait to weekend. Always waiting for something else to happen. And I started then every day, at some point in the day, no matter what I was doing, just stopping and saying, I'm loving what I'm doing right now. I'm just loving this right now, you know. Now your suggestion is another one. Take 5 minutes to find something maybe different to what you're doing that you can do easily, even if it's look at a horse video, or I don't know, look at something funny, something that you like doing. And then the other 5 minutes is to just take 5 minutes just to count your breaths, just to close your eyes and count your breaths, or to look at a beautiful scene and breathe and time yourself just for 5 minutes. People who've tried that have told me that they can tell they're better after only 5 minutes. They feel different, you know. So there's lots of little things you can do. You don't have to wait until your children have left home and you've been made redundant and you're 60 before you take any action, you know.
I think that that's quite an important point, which I just underline. A lot of people, when I listen to them, they say, well, if then, you know, it's that thinking first that has to happen and then I do that, you know, after that event and I keep thinking, no, because then you'll find something else that has to happen first before you do something. And in the end of the day, it won't happen at all. So stop thinking that. That's a pattern. See what part of that dream you can realize today. The other thing, when you say, you know, look out at the scenery, it's kind of like counting your blessings. I love that sort of like that gratefulness tradition, that mindfulness being of what I have. And I mean, there are certain things during the day that I don't love doing. And it's very difficult to say, I love what I'm doing right now. But I can sit there and I can say, well, at least I'm dry. I'm warm. I've got something to drink. I'm not hungry. You know, it's kind of like being aware of what's good in our lives right now. I think that helps also.
It does. And you know, a great exercise, which I did for 12 months, because I don't recommend anything to anybody unless I've tried it, is to have a little tiny notepad by the bed. And before you go to sleep, just write down 5 things you've been grateful for that day. Simple things. You might be grateful because you saw a beautiful cloud formation. You might be grateful because somebody phoned you up to wish you happy birthday. It could be anything. Okay. And what happened was, when I first started to do this, excuse me, it would maybe get to, I don't know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I think I'll go to bed soon. I think, oh my God, what am I going to write? What am I going to write in my thing? And I would realize I hadn't had one grateful thought all day. So I'd have to run around the house looking at things, finding things to be grateful for that I could write down. Now, what happened was, I realized over time, I started to notice things during the day that I could say, I can put that in tonight, you know. And then pretty soon, and still now, I find that I'm saying thank you all day long. I'm always seeing something that I can say thank you. If I wear a piece of jewelry that a friend has given me, I send them a blessing and say thank you. I mean, it takes like 3 seconds, you know, and that's then keeps that gratitude constantly in your mind. And I know other people have done this, have tried this as well, you know. So I said at the top of the page, put 5 things to be grateful. At the bottom of the page, put 5 ways in which you have served. Simple things. You know, and do it. I suggest people do it for 3 months. I mean, I did it for 12 months. It made a huge difference to me. So there's lots of things that women can do, really, little things. You know, you don't have to give up your job. You can do loads of little things to start to, you know, and tell people your needs. Tell your children your needs. You know, when my girls, when they were younger, used to say to me something about, oh, why are you working so hard, Mum? And other women would say, well, so we can afford that holiday, so we can afford that car. And I would never say that. I said, because it's really important to me that I work. It's what makes me happy. And then if I'm happy, you're going to be happy. It's important for us to be happy in what we do. That's why I do it. you know, because we have to tell them the truth as well. And we have to get young ones growing up realizing, especially girls growing up, that it's okay for them to identify their needs and tell people what their needs are. There's nothing wrong with that. You'll never get your needs met if nobody knows what they are.
I have a tradition. At the end of the podcast, there's always one question.
Oh, okay.
And that question is, which question, Geraldine, didn't I ask that you had wanted me to ask? Or is there anything where you say, oh, I would like to repeat that. That's really, really important to me.
I think not to be, feel you're some kind of a failure if you move jobs, if you leave jobs, or you want to find something else. So you think, oh, I've had too many jobs in the last 10 years. That's the way it's going now in society. Also, you will, and especially for young people, I'm a great believer that nothing you do before the age of 35 is lost. Nothing. Doesn't matter what it was, you know. And I know that after I left teaching and before I set up on my own, I had 2 years working in they were called then Refuge for Battered Women. And they're called now, I think, havens for domestic abuse people. And that, I went in as a fixer. I went into, okay, I'll tend to the solicitor, or I'll see to this. And the rest of the group, women, held me back and said, no, we don't fix women here. That's not what we do. We help if they ask us for help, but these women have been told what to do all their lives, and we don't do that here. And what was fantastic was to see the impact of setting that environment of unconditional love for those women who were coming in there, and watching how it transformed them. So if a woman said she was going to go back to her husband that night, and we knew she was going to get beaten again, nobody said, don't go, you shouldn't go, you mustn't go. We just said, do you think this is the right thing for you to do right now? And if she said yes, she would go off. She'd be back the next day, the broken rib and a bruised face. Nobody said, I told you so, that's what happens. She was welcomed straight back in. Let's put the kettle on, let's have a cup of tea, because she eventually would realize herself what was the right thing for her to do. And that was I would say, a complete training in unconditional love. And was the difference between training and facilitating, because I'd been a teacher and a trainer, and this was about facilitating something, you know. So I wouldn't have necessarily thought that had given me skills until I looked back. And I could track every part of my life and look at exactly all the skills I got from what I was doing then. So I think that's always an important exercise for anybody to do, to remember that nothing is lost, and you're always gaining skills, and you're always using skills that you didn't think you had, and it's important.
That's a lovely thought at the end, taking a piece of paper, writing down the jobs and saying, okay, what did I learn in those jobs? And giving yourself that permission to change jobs if it doesn't feel right anymore. If the situation is that you can change jobs, or at least to look into that, finding something that, you know, when you wake up in the morning, you're like, yes, I want to do this. So that's a lovely tip. Thank you very much. It was an honor. It was a privilege. Thank you very much for taking the time talking to me.
I really enjoyed our conversation, Anya, and thank you very much for asking me. I've enjoyed it so much.